The letter arrived on a Tuesday. There was no return address, no stamp, just a worn envelope, slipped beneath the front door of the apartment on Alder Creek Lane. The handwriting was faded, shaky, like someone who hadn't held a pen in years. When Claire picked it up, she felt it something heavy inside. Not money, not a gift, something else. Her mother, who had died 5 years ago, had always said, "A letter with no sender means someone couldn't say goodbye." Claire had ignored that kind of talk. But now, at 32, tired and alone in a city that never paused to care, she stared at the envelope longer than she should have. Then she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of yellowed paper. No greeting, no name. Just one line. "Your father didn't die in that fire. He was taken." Claire blinked. The fire at Alder Creek Ranch was no mystery. Everyone in town knew the story barn burned down in 1994. Her father never made it out. The body was buried, the casket sealed. Her mother had never talked about it again. Now, someone was saying it wasn't true? She turned the letter over. In the bottom right corner, in pencil, "Find room 4, check behind the bricks." Claire's heart pounded. Room 4. She hadn't heard those words in 20 years. She hadn't set foot near Alder Creek Ranch since the funeral. But now? The past wasn't just calling. It had left a key under her door. Claire's heart pounded in her chest as she drove the winding road toward Alder Creek Ranch, place she left behind at 10, never wanting to come back. Now, under a pale sky, the barn stood against the horizon, charred and roped off, as if guarding its secrets. She parked by the old barn, the same place her father's truck had been found after the fire. A dirt path led up the hill to the main house. Each step echoed in her mind. Memories of laughter, a room full of smoke, her mother's screams, and then silence. She reached the front porch, weathered boards creaking underfoot. The door was locked, but the screen rattled in the breeze. She slipped inside, the smell hitting Herdry pine, cool air, and something else, like ash. She walked through the empty living room, pausing where dusty furniture lay draped in sheets. Light from cracked windows painted patterns on the floor. On a side table, a brass candlestick still intact caught her attention. Claire picked it up and drew in a breath. This was her father's favorite. He'd mined it from a riverbed years ago, calling it his treasure from the creek. She moved on, up the stairs. Room 4's door stood closed, the room she'd inhabited as a child. Her name scratched faintly in pencil on the wooden frame. Claire, age 7. Trembling, she pushed it open. The small room smelled of dust and old fabric. A single window looked toward the creek below, where water slipped around old logs. In the corner stood a stack of brick cornerstones of a makeshift fireplace her father had built long ago. "Check behind the bricks," the letter said. Claire knelt and began shifting them. There, in the back wall, was a narrow gap. Her fingers slipped inside and found a metal box small, sealed with rusted hinges. She pried it open. Inside lay an old photo taped to a faded card. In the photo, her father, alive and smiling, holding a letter in front of the door to room 4. The card read, "Dad's final message, not a goodbye." There was also a folded piece of paper. Claire unfolded it. "He's alive," he waited. "Come find him." No signature. Her breath caught. Alive. Not the ashes at Alder Creek Ranch. She sank to the floor, clutching the note and picture. The sound of footsteps above made her look up. "Claire?" Her mother's voice, a soft, familiar. She looked up to see the doorway framed with light. Her mother, standing in a yellow dress, frozen between memory and reality. Claire stared at her mother, someone she hadn't seen since she was 10, suspended in the doorway like a memory framed in light. "Mom?" she whispered, voice small. Her mother's eyes glistened, unfocused. "Claire, is that you?" Claire swallowed hard, glancing at the metal box and note in her lap. She closed the box gently. "I found this." Mom stepped inside slowly, the boards creaking under her bare feet. She looked older than the memories Claire held, but the same in the way her posture carried both curiosity and regret. "What is it?" she asked. "Something Dad left," Claire said. She handed the photo and the letter across the gap between them. Mom's trembling hand accepted them. Her gaze flickered over the photo, her husband, alive, smiling in front of Claire's old bedroom. She swallowed and looked Claire in the eyes. "Maria," Claire said her name softly. Mom closed her eyes and nodded. "You found it." Claire didn't ask why she came back now, after 2 decades. "Did you send the letter?" Claire asked, voice steady. Mom took a breath. "I didn't want to, but I had to tell someone. I thought..." I thought it might bring you back. Claire ran a hand over the aged photo. You always said he died. Mom shook her head slowly. I believed it until I found the farm notes your father wrote them after the fire, carefully hidden in the fields. They said he escaped. Claire's breath caught. Escaped? Mom nodded, tears falling. He never made it back here. But he made it out. Claire stood, clutching the note. The house was suddenly too small, too still. We need to know where he is. Maria closed the distance, placing a hand on Claire's arm. I want to help you. Claire looked at her mother, so present and yet so fragile with shock. Then we start here, together. Outside, the wind whispered through broken windows. Claire stepped toward the hallway, motioning for Maria to follow. A long journey lay ahead, one buried in ash, shadows, and the promise of answers. Claire closed the door to room 4 with a soft click. The metal box and letter were tucked into her jacket. She could feel her mother's eyes on her as they descended the stairs of the old ranch house. Dad wrote other things, Maria said. Journals. I buried them near the creek. I thought they were burned in the fire. Her voice cracked with old fear. Then we find them, Claire said. Let's go. They stepped outside into the clearing between the house and the old barn. A breeze stirred the tall grass, and distant hills curved beneath a gray sky. The creek wound through the pasture, its waters brown and slow. Maria led the way, her feet sure on paths formed in memory. Claire followed, scanning the ground for any sign of disturbance. An upturned stone, a torn scrap of paper. They reached the creek bed beneath an old willow. Sunlight broke through clouds, catching on swirling insects. Maria knelt and brushed aside dirt and roots. After a few moments, she pulled up a damp cloth bundle. Claire held her breath. Maria unwrapped it slowly, revealing a stack of leather-bound journals, soaked but intact. They're his, Claire whispered, fingertips trembling. His handwriting. Maria nodded, tears filling her eyes. He wrote about hiding. He said he didn't want to lose you too. Claire opened the top journal and read the date. The 22nd of September, 1994, 3 weeks after the fire. I made it out. I'm alive, but I can't come back. Not yet. It's not safe. I need to protect her, and Claire. One day, I'll explain. But for now, I bury my past with the smoke. Claire flipped pages. More entries, locations, coded notes, hints about meetings, and a place called River's Bend. Her heart pounded. River's Bend, where is that? Maria wiped tears. I told him it was a bad road. He said he'd follow the creek out of state to the west. Claire clenched her jaw. We find River's Bend. We find him. Maria placed a hand on her shoulder. Yes. Later that evening, they returned to the house as dusk fell. Claire sat at the kitchen table, journals open, notebook and phone ready. She called her best friend, Sam, a local reporter. Sam picked up after 2 rings. Claire, everything okay? Not really, Claire said. But I need your help. I need to find River's Bend. I can pull maps, county records, even talk to old-timers. Thank you. I think he's out there, Sam hesitated. I'll start now. Claire ended the call and opened the journal again. More names, more coordinates. Maria leaned over the table. He thought he could come home in secret, that he'd return if I let it keep us safe. Let what keep us safe? Claire asked. Maria sighed. He thought that pretending he died would save you, but it stole years from both of us. Claire swallowed. Then we fix it. We find him. Her mother nodded. They sat together in the silent kitchen, journals between them, planning steps to uncover the man the rest of the world believed was gone. The ranch stood beyond the windows, haunted by fire, but now stirred by hope and an old promise. Come find him. Claire loaded the dusty journals into her backpack and helped Maria into the rental car. Dawn light stretched across the ranch as they pulled out, banners of pale gold and gray. Maps spread across the passenger seat. The old handwritten direction, follow the creek until it bends north of Highway 42. They drove in silence, the journals resting beside clay-colored fields. River's Bend looked exactly how Claire expected and more. Narrow gravel road, tall grass crowding both sides, trees arching over the creek like hushed witnesses. No signs, no markers. Here, Maria whispered, pointing where the creek curved sharply around a moss-covered oak. Beneath it, mud-caked stones marked a path down to the water. They stepped out, hearts pounding. Claire felt time stretch. What if someone else had been there already? They followed an overgrown trail, creek on one side, damp logs lining the bank. At a mossy rock, Claire found small stone cairn, 3 slender rocks balanced like deliberate markers. "Someone's been here," she said, voice hushed. Maria swallowed. "He said he'd leave a sign if he was ever here." Claire examined the cairn and saw the next clue, a journal entry. "Met an old friend, coded directions, still safe. April 95. April 95, Claire said aloud. He wasn't alone. They searched along the bank and discovered a clearing with a rusted metal trunk, half buried. Claire knelt and read the carved initials. CW. She pried it open inside, water-stained but legible, a hand-drawn map, a pocket watch with initials CW, and a folded letter addressed to "My dearest Maria." Maria's breath hitched. Craig, that was his friend. He promised to help him hide. Claire unfolded the letter. "He's safe for now, North Bend safe house. He'll contact you. I guard this trunk until Claire grows up." Claire's vision blurred. "North Bend?" "Not Rivers Bend," Maria whispered. So he moved. A sudden rustle made them freeze. A man stepped into the clearing, hat low. Sturdy frame, eyes impossible to place. He looked too young to know the full story, but old enough to carry its weight. Claire swallowed, voice quiet but firm. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer at first. Then he reached into his pocket and held out a key, the same design as the metal box from room 4. Claire took it, her fingers shaking. "Are you working with him?" He nodded slowly. "He asked me to wait. To bring you this when you came." Silence stretched between them, past, present, choices born of sacrifice. Rivers Bend had led them here, to a living link in the chain of secrets. Now they'd have to decide whether to trust the man and follow their father's path into the unknown. The mantle, silent, his face half hidden by shadow, shelled Claire's gaze steadily. Rain-damp blades of grass clung to his boots. "My name is Jacob," he said quietly. "Your father trusted me with everything. He sent me after you." Claire stepped forward, key trembling in her hand. "Where is he?" Jacob glanced to the creek, then at Maria. "He's at North Bend, a cabin by the old railroad tracks. It's livable but minimal. He's been waiting for your letter." Claire's heart clenched. "He knew I left. He expected me to come back." "He hoped," Jacob said, voice soft. "He wanted to see you." Maria exhaled. "But why hide all this?" Jacob's eyes flicked to the mossy cairns. "He didn't want the ranch burning up because of questions." Questions? Alder Creek never just burned. He discovered something about the soil, the water, something that was more dangerous than fire. Claire felt the key grow heavy. Then why disappear? He realized he couldn't fix it. Not with the ranch. Not without putting you both in danger. Silence fell. The creek gurgled. Above them, the trees whispered. Time griped their breath. Finally, Claire nodded. "We need to go to North Bend." Jacob stepped aside, gesturing to the gravel road. "It's 3 hours northwest, but first this." He handed Claire a small worn journal. Inside, he'd drawn a sketch of the cabin he'd been at, directions in faded pencil lines, and a single phrase, "Find him before summer ends." Claire thumbed the page. "Summer ends." Maria touched her arm. "We don't have forever." Claire looked between Jacob and her mother. "Let's go." They climbed into the car. Claire kept the key and journal close. Behind them, Rivers Bend whispered farewell. That night, they reached North Bend just before midnight. A single dim porch light. A cabin old, but well-kept, sat among pines and tall grass. Claire's hand shook as she climbed the porch steps. Jacob stayed back in the shadows. She unlocked the door with trembling fingers, key clicking. The door opened into a small living space. A few photos on a mantle, a stack of quilting squares, a metal guitar leaning in the corner, and then she saw him, her father. White beard, thin frame, eyes that held homesickness and hope. "Claire?" His voice cracked like old wood. She stepped inside. He rose slowly, arms open. "Dad." She closed the distance. Tears in her eyes. "You're alive," he nodded. "I didn't want to leave you. I couldn't stay. But I prayed you'd come." He looked at Maria. "And you?" Maria stepped forward. Father and daughter, encircled by secrets and love, they stood in the cabin by the tracks, rain tapping the roof of fragile home at the end of a journey. Inside the cabin by the tracks, the rain pattered softly against the roof, matching the slow rhythm of their breaths. Claire stood face to face with her father, this faded version of the man she once knew. He ran a hand through wisps of white hair. "I never stopped believing," he said, voice cracked. "That one day, you'd come." Claire swallowed. Why didn't you come back? He sighed. I wanted to protect you from the fallout, from the truth about the land, about the experiments. I thought if I stayed hidden, I could keep you safe. Maria stepped forward. Safe from fire. But what about from silence? He looked away. I failed. I see that now. Claire's chest tightened. Those journals? You wrote, Dad. You said you buried your past in the smoke. He nodded slowly. I did. Out of fear and shame. I thought, if I disappeared, the story ended. But it didn't, Claire said softly. It began again. With a letter. Her father closed his eyes. I sent it. When I saw the cabin key in your hand, I knew you'd come. Tears filled Claire's eyes. Why didn't you say goodbye? He swallowed hard. I couldn't. Not in fire. Not in ashes. I needed time to learn what happened. And who I could become. Maria placed a hand on his shoulder. You made this harder for all of us. He nodded. I know. I'm sorry. Silence fell. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, the three of them stood in a fragile circle, separated by years but bound by truth. The father looked at Maria. Did you ever stop thinking I was dead? She shook her head. Mom's love kept me alive with or without you here. Claire stepped forward. We came to heal. But we need you here. To help us bring truth back home. He nodded. Then I'll come. Let's fix this. Together. They stood for a moment, locked by that promise. Behind them, the small guitar leaned in the corner waiting for a song to release the years of silence. The drive back felt surreal, rain's slick roads winding through pine forests until the ranch finally appeared, silhouetted against a gray sky. Claire guided the car up the gravel drive, the tires crunching louder than she remembered. Her father, quiet in the passenger seat, stared at the barn's charred remains and the blackened pasture. After years away, the place looked like a fossil frozen at the moment of destruction. He cleared his throat. It never healed, did it? No, Claire answered softly. They stopped near the house. Maria stepped out first, drawing a deep breath. Their father followed. Claire took off her coat, wiping rain from her arms. The three of them stood together for a moment, soaking in the familiar air, the scent of pine and earth. Inside the living room, dust motes drifted through boards of broken windows. She ran a hand along a pane, wincing at the crack. We have to fix it, she said. Not just the structure, the memory. Father nodded. I'll help. I'll testify. I'll tell anyone what I know. Maria led him to the fireplace, stepping past an old photo of their family. This is where it began and where it ends. They set to work immediately. They hauled tarps to cover the holes. They cleared debris. They replaced boards on the porch. As the hours passed, neighbors appeared, some curious, others wary. Father greeted them with quiet words. I'm sorry. Some nodded, others stared away. By dusk, the house looked ready for a meeting. Claire had set up chairs in the parlor. A projector stood on a table near the mantel, ready to show photos of journals, keys, the cabin by the tracks. Maria moved through the room, lighting candles. They need to know why we're here, Claire nodded. They do. That evening, a modest crowd gathered under the porch light, neighbors, old family friends, the local sheriff, even the mayor. The tension was heavier than rain clouds. Claire stepped forward. Thank you for coming, she began. Her father stood beside her, trembling but resolute. I'm here to tell you my truth. I hid the fact that I survived the fire. I left because I feared what else had burned. She clicked the projector. Images appeared. Journals, cabin photos, the letter, the key. Gasps passed through the crowd. The mayor stepped forward. Son, are you saying you abandoned us? Father's voice cracked. Yes, and I am sorry. I went into hiding to protect my family from secrets I created. A silence settled, thick and uncomfortable. Then the sheriff spoke. We'll need to investigate, but we appreciate your honesty. Claire set the projector aside. We also want to restore the ranch not as it was, but as it should be. A place of community, not cover-ups. Neighbors shifted. Mother held their father's hand. He squeezed back. By the end of the night, there were no cheers. But there were conversations. Handshakes. Tearful eyes. As Claire and her family locked up, the house felt different, more vulnerable, but more real. Father turned to Claire. Thank you. She looked at him, voice firm but kind. Welcome home. The ranch had been built on ashes. Now, it would stand on truth. Morning light poured through patched windows as Claire stepped onto the front porch, breathing the crisp, hopeful air. The house looked different now, not perfect, but full of possibility. Her father stood by the garden bed they cleared last week, His hands were dirty, but steady as he set a seedling into rich soil. Maria joined him, offering a gentle smile. "Ready to plant the first crop?" Claire asked warmly. He nodded. "Something small. We start here." Claire knelt beside them, pressing the plant into the earth. "We should put up a sign," she said. "Alder Creek, a place of truth." Her voice sounded lighter than it had in weeks. Maria laughed gently. "Or just call it home." They shared a quiet moment before the door creaked. It was the sheriff holding a wooden tool rack they'd requested. "Figured this belongs here," he said. "Community effort." Claire thanked him as he set it by the porch, along with 2 local volunteers who came to help rebuild the barn's rafters. Throughout the day, neighbors trickled in with donation snails, seats for the parlor, fresh paint. Some held back, wary. Others smiled, hopeful. By afternoon, Luke arrived, lugging a metal sign, "Welcome Wanderers." He'd rallied the neighbor kids to rebuild the wooden fence. Claire grinned. "You convinced them to help?" He laughed. "They wanted to see you back." Claire's chest tightened. This was more than renovation, it was renewal. Later, they gathered in the parlor to lay plans for community events, storytelling nights, creekside cleanups, fundraisers to support their father's foundation, a new initiative to preserve historical homes and provide healing workshops. Their father sat quietly, watching. At one point, he reached across the table and gently squeezed Claire's hand. She met his eyes, grateful, forgiving, open. Dusk settled as they moved downstairs to gather candles. Maria paused, breathing in the scent of wood and fresh paint. "This second chance, we almost let it slip." Claire shook her head. "We fought for it." Her father nodded. "Thank you for bringing me back. And this place." The ranch no longer felt like a relic of loss. It felt alive with community, with purpose, with the promise of new memories built on truth, not ashes. Autumn settled in quickly, painting trees along Alder Creek with red and gold. The community events were in full swing. Storytelling nights, creek cleanups, and workshops hosted in the parlor. The property felt alive, filled with laughter, soft music, and shared meals on the porch. But not everyone was celebrating. Late one afternoon, a knock came at the door. Claire opened it to find a stern-looking woman in a dark collar, features cold, eyes cautious. "Excuse me," the woman said. "I'm from the State Historical Society. We've received a complaint questioning the authenticity of your documentation and your father's claims. We'd like to examine those journals and the cabin records." Claire nodded, steady. "Of course. We have everything here." The woman surveyed the room. "Timeline's tight. I'll return with a warrant if needed." She handed Claire a card and left. The tension in the parlor hung heavy. Claire closed the door and took a deep breath. Maria looked at her. "They suspect us?" Luke frowned. "They think we faked it?" Claire shook her head. "It's damage control. Whoever sent that anonymous tip, they want to discredit us." Her father's voice quivered. "Can't they see we're rebuilding? That our documents are real? That's why we invited them in," Claire said, voice firm. "Let's get everything ready." The next morning, a small delegation arrived. 2 representatives, a county archivist, and a local historian. They were shown the journals, photos, cabin letters, and the metal chest. Claire and Maria answered questions. When the archivist flipped through the leather-bound entries, she paused. "This is remarkable. Handwriting matches known samples. Dates line up." She flipped further. Notations, here farm journals. Soil analysis. Verified with county records. She closed the book carefully. The state rep looked at Claire. "This is strong evidence. The records cataloged here are compelling." The local historian smiled gently. "These belong in public archives, not destroyed." Claire exhaled. "Thank you." Evening fell. The community gathered once more. A bonfire crackled in the clearing. String lights hung across lawn tables. Claire looked around at familiar faces, volunteers, neighbors, friends old and new. Nobody felt like a stranger anymore. Her father stepped up to the mic. His voice, while shaky, carried gratitude. "I want to apologize again for disappearing, for hiding these truths. But more than that, I want to thank you for believing, for rebuilding, for giving my family a second chance." He paused. A moment of silence passed before applause broke out. Claire stood beside him, hand in his. Turning to Maria, she smiled. This felt like redemption, not just for him, but for all of them. Later, under the stars, the bonfire embers glowed warm. Claire and Luke sat on a log bench with s'mores, watching young volunteers laugh as they cleaned up. Luke nudged her. Think we've earned it? Claire looked at the small flame, then back at her father, who spoke quietly with the historian. Yes, she said gently. We've built something that won't burn easy. Luke grinned. Then let's keep building. Claire's gaze shifted to the pastures beyond the firelight, where the creek's silver length lay nearly hidden by falling leaves. In that reflection she saw resilience. She felt hope, and beneath it all too the beat of a community's forgiveness and a family's promise they began to grow a new legacy. Morning light filtered gently through the new shutters as Claire stepped onto the porch with a journal in hand. Over the past months, the ranch had transformed from a place of secrets to a sanctuary of honesty, but today, she felt it needed something more. Her father was in the parlor, placing framed photos of their journey from the hidden photo box in room 4 to the cabin by the tracks, and the bonfire bonanza where the community stood by them. He paused, breathing deeply. I want these walls to remember what we overcame, he murmured. Claire nodded, taking a photo from him. They will. Maria emerged carrying a tray of fresh coffee. We should create a permanent archive via book, local exhibit, maybe a video project so future generations know the truth. Claire smiled. I already have an idea. She placed her journal on the table. The letter from Alder Creek, our family's reckoning. Her father leaned forward, voice filled with quiet pride. Tell the world. Later that morning, the local historian arrived with a small crew and an old scanner. They set up in the parlor, journals, photos, letters, and even the weathered key from the cabin, now pressed into archival sleeves. Neighbors came in to record short interviews, volunteers recalling how rebuilding felt, the sheriff explaining why truth mattered, Maria recalling finding the journals. Claire stood beside the crew, her heart full. Afternoon. The community event was simply gathering around the oak tree where the trapdoor marker stood. A banner overhead read, Alder Creek Truth Day. Friends, neighbors, local media, and even the Historical Society representative from last visit gathered. Claire stepped forward. We built this home together, she began. It stands because of our willingness to face what was buried. She gestured to the stone marker. Today, we plant seeds not just in soil, but in story. We will plant an orchard here apples, pears, cherry trees that honor each person we lost in fire or silence. Her father and Maria planted the first sapling, hands dirty but hopeful. The crowd followed, each planting a tree to honor truth and healing. Evening. As dusk settled, Claire stood on the porch with her family. The image of the oak, the marker, and the young orchard glowed behind them in fading light. Her father cleared his throat. I missed so much being gone, but I'm here now, and staying. Maria squeezed Claire's shoulder. We healed, and we chose to grow. Claire looked back toward the creek and the house that once held secrets. Now it echoed a new promise. Tomorrow we begin the final chapter, she whispered. And for the first time in years, the wind through Alder Creek spoke of beginnings not endings. Twilight descended as the final camera rolled in the parlor. The scanned journals, photos, rusty key, and letters now lived forever in digital archives hosted by the local Historical Society and available online. Claire watched the historian archive the last item, the small metal box from room 4, once hidden under bricks. Maria stood nearby, gently wiping a tear as she watched every page preserved forever. Outside, lanterns lit the path to a small gathering in the yard, where the apple, pear, and cherry saplings freshly planted cast young shadows in the soft glow. A long table awaited, laid with homemade pies, lemonade, and local produce grown on the reclaimed land. Neighbors, friends, ranch hands, and even reporters gathered. At the center stood a wooden podium, decorated with live flowers and photo collages of their journey. Claire as a girl in room 4, the dark cabin by the tracks, the prologue night when her father first stepped back onto the ranch, and the orchard saplings. Claire stepped forward, breath steady. Thank you all for coming again. Tonight we gather not just to end a story, but to begin a legacy with honesty, healing, and hope. Her father, standing beside her, added, I am forever grateful. For forgiveness. For being welcomed home. Maria took a deep breath. Alder Creek will always be our family's home. But now it belongs, fully, to our towner neighbors and anyone who believes that truths must be seen, not buried. The crowd applauded, some wiping tears, others faces bright with pride. One by one, neighbors stepped forward to share brief words. A volunteer who helped rebuild the porch, the sheriff who secured the historical documents, a local teacher who planned to bring her students to see the true story of Alder Creek. As the event wound down, Claire and Maria walked their father out to the oak marker. They stood in a hush under the night sky, saplings in view. He touched one branch. It's beautiful. Claire smiled. We'll care for it, water it through seasons, watch it grow. He nodded. Like our family. Maria squeezed his arm. We brought you back. We'll keep bringing it forward. They stood together in the glow of fairy lights, the creek's hush in the distance. The path ahead was open, a story complete, but a new one beginning. When the guests dispersed, Claire and Maria sat with their father on the swing by the old barn, watching stars appear. They spoke softly of plans, a yearly Truth Day celebration, scholarships in their father's name, educational tours for outsiders, even a small retreat to teach people how to face difficult family secrets. Claire rested her head on her father's shoulder. We wrote our ending. He kissed her forehead. And planted our future. Maria joined them, leaning in close. Where silence used to live, now stories will grow. They sat in shared peace. The ranch no longer defined by fire or escape, but by the roots they planted together deep, intentional and alive.